Dr. Jengam, you just mentioned about, yeah, when there was a massacre in the village when you were studying. How old were you, and whether that was the like your protest and going in the streets was a success, or whether it was like a setback to your community?
For example, the incident I'm talking about is like it was in 1992. It's called Chundur massacre. Like now I was in my
Mhm.
undergraduate second year. I still remember, the incident happened like I think it was some 25, 30 kilometers from the place where I was studying. So
Mhm.
like, I was like, in my teenage years, like now it's 17, 18, and I knew what happened. And basically that's when, some of our, that by that time I'm very active in student politics too, in
Mhm.
undergraduate time. So like some of our friends, we got together and we went into the local Dalit neighborhood, and we just, we went and told them that this is what happened. We must come out and do something. I remember all night we sat and we collected people, and then, next day we thought we'll go around the town and do the protest. So we staged very big protest and went around the whole afternoon, and even our teachers and other friends also joined us. So we raised slogans. So one of the important lesson is that, for us is that, this is this even now it happens. It's not that, it ended in, it happened
Yeah.
sometime in
Yeah.
1992 and it went. No, it's not like that. There is everyday violence against Dalits. So that's one of the important thing, like, today, like for example, being a Muslim or being a Dalit in India is a life and death situation for you. Like, because that's where you have to realize that, you are under constant watch or vigilance. Like it's like being a black in America. Like
Mhm.
you when you are out of house, you don't know what happens, sort of situation. So like caste humiliation and violence is an everyday phenomena, because if you're assertive and tries to assert your dignity, and you don't have to do anything. Even if you like, that's what, like my grandmother and my I used to see as a child in my village,
Mhm.
that, to be attacked by upper caste, our people don't have to do any crime. Just me, even if they wear shoes, slippers and walk on the road, that is a crime, considered a crime. Like that's why I remember I used to puzzle, like whenever I used to go with my grandmother in village,
Mhm.
the moment we used to go near the upper caste houses, she used to take out her slippers and hide in her sari, because, the upper caste won't see it, because, if they
Right.
feel offended if she wears sari. And I used to say, why are you doing this? It's very hot and everything. She used to say, no problem, I will walk till there. And, they never used to, in the sense they, because they knew that, even telling me that this is what, like they used to tell that, they don't, upper caste people won't feel comfortable, and, it might result in violence and all those things. But, that we used to accept it as, that is our life situation. That's why, you don't have to do a crime, like, wearing a clean white shirt is also a crime, considered a crime. And that's why it's very interesting. This is what you learn as a Dalit in India, like, your existence and your aspiration. You don't have to do, like, a crime or to be doing something. Just mere aspiration to be behave like a normal human being can end you in trouble. Like that's what, like, in colleges and schools, that's what, even today in India, that is the biggest problem. Like, every day you hear, like, Dalit family getting prevented from, walking on the main streets of the village and entering into, cinema theaters. You pay for your own ticket and you are not allowed to sit many times.
And
These
what
are
is
all,
the population of Dalits in India? What is
it's,
the?
you will be very surprised, 250 million people are Dalits in India.
Oh, it's
That's more than almost 20% of India's population are
wow.
considered Dalits.
Oh,
250 millions.
oh,
Like,
it's more than Pakistan's population.
not more. We combine many countries together. Canada 35 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Canadian 35 million, they're not even half of what Dalit population in India. So
Wow.
that many people experience indignity day by day in their existence. That's why when I tell my students that, they can't fathom this reality that there are 250 million people in India, every day gets humiliated. There, like, according to National Crime Records Bureau of India, it's government of official records, every day 10 Dalit women get raped. Every day.
Tell us about the struggle now of Dalit liberation in India. What are the how are people mobilizing? How are people fighting against this kind of oppression and dehumanization?
Yeah, that's what it's one like, in this bleak situation, one of the important thing, which really drives me is that looking at these young people and, people in villages who are illiterate and uneducated, they're fighting. And, that's what is interesting. Like this whole idea that, there's so much violence exists in India. That doesn't mean that people are sitting and, quietly and, acquiescing the violence of the upper caste. There is a active resistance from, different levels. Like, if you look at, everyday papers and also like social movements and political organizing, everything, you see that across India, people are basically always waging wars against inhumanity and dehumanization. And it is that, I think, which inspire people like us. Like, we escaped from that, drudgery, and we are in privileged situation. People like me, feel very, motivated, and also feel doubly responsible because, I'm in a privileged situation, and I must contribute whatever the way I can in terms of, to the struggles of the people on the ground who are basically, they are struggling without even having anything. They are trying to protect the dignity and also take forward these struggles.
In that vein, there's been a rise of scholarship on Dalit studies and the Dalit Studies Center, and different theoretical approaches like anti-caste epistemology. Can you talk a little bit about the rise of awareness and scholarship and centers that focus Dalit perspectives?
Yeah, that's thank you for this question, Omni. And yes, it's part of this larger struggles of Dalits. Like one of the important things, like, till 1990 government of India, as I said, a state took the responsibility of education of Dalits, especially in rural areas and across India, and also implementation of affirmative action policies, particularly the in the government employment and educational institutions, that, certain percentage of seats and also jobs should be reserved for, people coming from deprived castes. That is an important motivator. By 1990, what you're seeing is that, across India, this first generation educated Dalits have entered into different institutions, taking from universities, colleges, government, employment. What you see that, these generations, when we entered, like in fact, when I entered, like when I was doing my master's and MPhil, one of the important things we used to see that, we never read a Dalit text as students. Like that's what, like when I went into my MA, like in fact, having conversations with teachers and friends, one of the important things we used to see that, how come there are no Dalits in any of the history texts we read? I remember one teacher, when I asked that, how come there are no Dalits in any of the text we are reading about, what did they do? So in fact, one of the teachers told me that, why don't you write? It is your responsibility. If you really think there is a lack, and it is your responsibility to write about them. In fact, that was the motivation for me. In fact, I was supposed to become a bureaucrat. That was the aspiration of every intelligent student in India, that, you get into, do your undergrad and masters, and while doing your masters, you write the civil service exam and become bureaucrat, and that's like your lifetime achievement. But, I remember when I wanted to, like everyone used to think, all my friends from undergraduation and masters, that I will become a bureaucrat. But, I chose this path of becoming academic, and, everyone used to get surprised. Why are you doing this? Because one thing is that, it's devalued academic profession. Second thing is that I'm pursuing history. That too, not even, economics or some, field in which you make a lot of money and all those things. I'm pursuing history. They used to think, my God, this guy is crazy. So, but one of the important thing is that going to university, it made me realize that if my people are not represented in history writing, I must have a responsibility to produce that.
Yes.
And this is what our generation and generation before us, when we entered into universities, one of the important things we wanted to look at is that critique the existing scholarship, both historical, social sciences, and humanities.
Mhm.
And in fact, when I was in MA, one of the important thing, in fact, in Telugu literature at University of Hyderabad, in fact, our generation produced fascinating Dalit literary texts. Dalit literature become a very, very important, genre which challenged the dominant narratives, dominant poetry, dominant novel. These are all, very efflorescence of this Dalit writing was very important part of these things. So one of the things we try to do both as students and also as scholars is that, critique the dominant narratives, point out the lacking of Dalit voice in existing scholarship, and articulate our aspirations and what actually write about our struggles, and I know what we have contributed to making up this, literature and social sense scholarship. So that's why you see that that 90s onwards, you see this very interesting you know um, idea that Dalit intervention became a very important aspect in social sciences and also humanities. That's when Dalits became important, people who have started altering the very idea of genre of history, genre of writing, genre of various aspects.